how can I go through channels that almost are non-existent? And it's back to what Narodi was talking about, because how can I work my way into areas of the brain that are unused and try to short-circuit some of the primitive restraints of the vehicle that I'm occupying. And I feel that frustration. I know T feels that frustration. And I don't know how many times T said, if I could just pop that membrane, if I could just get that something to get out of the way, if I could get that veil to lift, or any words you can think of to say, because I know that the mind is there, but something is prohibiting it getting through on something that you're trying to express into the consciousness. Something that subtle mind is trying to express into the consciousness.
You talk about dreams. The reason individuals or just or mostly different characteristics of one case. There's one individual on your cabinet has a good characteristic, and we can actually be by more than one of them that compared to more than one characteristic. Is there like one individual, whole individual?
Everybody in this room here has nothing. I mean, they have their own strengths with their own characteristics. Just because you might have a common characteristic with all of these doesn't mean that it will have anything to do with your strengths. Okay? And you may not think that's the way it came across to me. Now, you have, I don't know how many individuals on your strengths. And every characteristic that you have, all of your strengths may not have all of the characteristics, but they will have the majority of them. And it doesn't, every time you respond or you don't respond to a characteristic that you are working on, it helps all of the ones on your strengths. Maybe some who are trying harder, and it might help them individually better. Do you understand it?
What I was thinking is like, okay, is it possible for one of my strengths in a vehicle for me maybe encounter somebody that is not my strength?
Well, who knows? You might meet somebody with common characteristics that you have. But it doesn't matter if you do or don't, because you can't help them consciously. I mean, you can't see somebody and say, oh, you have to say to yourself, you have to take characteristics, and then try to help that person. You can't do it. I don't think so. In other words, you would get off the track. You can think of doing something like that. It may be you see somebody at your work, or in the grocery store, or standing in a bread line someplace, and you want to try to help them. You think they may be displaying some kind of characteristic that you feel you have, and you can't send any help to them, because you can hope that things will work out for them. And when you hope for that, in the next level, you put somebody on the job to see what they can do to help them. It's just like that incident when we were in Canada, and we saw this Indian couple sitting, trying to get a ride. And we left and came back about 4 or 5 hours later, and they were still sitting there. And I'm concerned for them. The storm was coming in, the wind was getting dark, the wind was blowing. And I saw them sitting there, and I felt sorry for them. And I said, oh, I wish they could get a ride. And a car was going by, and it just it just stood on his face, just like a wall. It got right in front of him. Just stopped to take him. So I didn't do anything. But I felt like my desire to help him is somebody who was working with him probably stopped that car. The only one person was in that car, so I got to take those two idiots. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know that your thought might not have been so strong that in the unconscious of the people of the car that drove by, it was like a neon sign.
But the point I'm trying to get at is you cannot do that. And that's the point I was trying to say. I didn't say, car, you stop and pick up those two idiots, or two people. I wouldn't dare do something like that. Even if somebody was being ugly to us, I would never say, I wish you would run into that field. Because the only thing I think is, I wish I could stab you, personally. And then I change and say, I wish they wouldn't act that way. I don't like it. The humans are being too ugly. I don't like that. And that is consciously translating to the next level. And maybe they will do something about it. They will take care of that individual. It doesn't mean that they will make them run into a tree. They won't do what they won't sacrifice. And they will see to it that if they are the kind of individuals that are trying to be good, even though at that moment they were tested and they looked, tested by us, and they had a bad response. And through that bad response, this level will evaluate that individual to see if what it needs to make it have a better response and to be better. You see what I'm saying? So it will be, in a sense, directed, not told to do something, not made to do something, but incidents will probably occur or come to that individual to get them straightened out or go down. But personally, I feel like that kind of individual who responds that way with us is part of the shadow. Because they were tested and they weren't, and they are with
It's one subject that you, they drank and tested that, individuals. An individual represent or represent an individual is like someone came in, the person out there that people out there that I'm there on my string and he has to get just accomplish me. But they also have to calling somebody up and be on their string as well.
So they won't be on as well, no. So you all have separate strengths.
And they don't have to over that?
I don't have something that you have to listen. I might be wrong.
I'd like to think on this. And I'd like for, it's a good question. And Tina asked the question to get what happens. It's muddled in my mind. It's probably time for it to be clarified because what's muddled in my mind is, maybe Keith will get the answer to it right now, but what's muddled in my mind is where are there two, I don't know if there are two telephone lines working at the same time. One is a vehicular connection, blood line, so to speak, and one is a mind, which a mind, to tell you the truth, I have a feeling that the connection is a mind connection, and that when it as it connects with the mind that my strength, that the mind of the vehicle, let's start over, all these words, I feel as if the mind of your vehicle has a connection with mind of other vehicles. And that as your vehicle experiences things, and the mind of your vehicle expresses what it has still has the residual, or what it is, where it is in its development program, the mind of the vehicle, as it deals with those and expresses both those and the elements of the vehicle characteristics, that it senses on a mind line. Now, at this point, I'm confused because I also feel like each connection that it has on that string, it dumps all that information. I'm just telling you what's coming into my mind. It may not have any truth to it, and if it doesn't, that's fine. We'll work on it and come up with something better. But let's say that the mind of Tolodi's vehicle is connected to a lot of minds of other vehicles. And when Tolodi experiences something, I feel like it goes right down the line and deposits all that, with all those minds on that connected string, right down to the roots of that string. And that, depending upon what it is that he's sending, will depend upon the percentages of individuals along the way that the message he's sending has significance to. In other words, let's say that he's sending a signal that he might find an awful lot of commonness as it goes through that string. Or he might be sending a signal that finds very little commonness, but he still is sending that signal. And wherever there's anyone on that string, on that connection, that branch that his leaf is connected to, where there's anyone that has that commonness, they suck it up. They just, like a nutrient, it comes right to them. If they have that same characteristic to deal with, it might be dumped their way, and if there's nothing for them to draw from it, it might then go right on down the line and head for others for the comment. Now, that's just a picture that's in my head, because I don't really have any idea. Sometimes I think that you've got two lines, and one is a bloodline connection. But every time I say that, it's got a bunch of baloney. You don't have any connection with the bloodline. And yet, the only thing that keeps saying that's true in my head is that you have that the mind of the vehicle has when you were a kid and you cut out paper dolls, they all held hands, that you've got that kind of mind connection. Now, in one sense, the mind of the vehicle is still a physiological genetic structure. Because don't forget, we've got to say that the mind of the vehicle is still one little element that like houses the identity. And it's that little element that goes on, extends beyond the lifetime of the vehicle. But it was a part of the physiological genetic structure. So therefore, it's got a connection. But how to identify or classify or label that connection, I don't know how to do that. I want you to
I don't know or whether it is possible, but I see it as frequency. Like the brainwave, if they did an electroencephalogram of everybody in this room right now, all of the brainwaves would be different. They would be within the norm. It's like, in other words, that's, it wouldn't be abnormal. People like convulsive I think it's brain damage. It would be within the norm, but the frequency would probably be different however it doesn't work till when, like, let's take G&O frequency. We've told you how sometimes here we are resting in two different parts of the house, as I craft, and we do not see each other until we're dead, and yet we will come out with just about the same colors on every day. And to where now I try to figure out something that I don't think that dough would come out of it, and it still doesn't work. Now, it isn't that we are psychic. I think our brain waves are almost, it's like, are almost identical. Because it being having a lineage and the brain waves are identical.
I don't think they're identical at all, but I think they're so in tune with each other.
Yes, okay.
In other words, I don't think that the frequencies are identical at all, but I think that they are so in tune with each other because the effort that we have exerted being in tune with each other's brainwaves in order to accomplish this task, that it's hard for the other one to work on its brainwaves without the other one immediately getting the signal and being aware of it, because I know that unconsciously, day and night, unconsciously, and I think we could say unconsciously, maybe semi-conscious, but he and I are always wanting to know, wanting to stay as perfectly in tune with each other as we can, if you can understand it. In other words, we want, it's like we want to know that there's, just like that, if something enters the brain wave of the other one, or the other one is experiencing something or getting a signal, or it's just like we're sitting there with G on one telephone, and I've got my hand on another telephone, and we immediately and that's the way we're trying to, and that goes on all the time, 24 hours a day, whether we're awake or whether we're asleep. And I feel like that practice has caused us to be so in tune with each other.
It's possible. But anyway, I still think that you're in tune with the frequency of the brainwaves of individuals on your street. Now, they say...
So the strain is the common, we might call a common brainwave, a common frequency.
Okay, they say that before you do anything, it usually has to be activated in the brain. Now, that may be obsolete, but they start with the gene and then the genes and then the brain genes, or they may work together, I don't know, but the characteristics are through the frequency. And your thought is a frequency to your strength. Your corrective measures. Do you understand that?
It's like there are 40 channels on TV. It's like there are 35 channels here.
With as many channels that you need for the task that you have. If you have 20 things that you have to work on, then you have 20 channels. And I don't believe that all of the ones under strain have every one of the characteristics.
No, but that's where I was saying a moment ago. That's where this gets fit into what you're saying. Let's say that Alex Doty's got channel 1 and channel 2 and channel 3, and anything that Alex Doty experiences goes out to channel 1. And everybody on channel 1 who has the characteristic that you're dealing with at that time is the one who's the recipient of your labor. Or would that not be right?
The way I see it is they are allotted a certain group that may be made up of thousands and thousands of individuals.
Right.
And those individuals have the characteristics that Yogi has to deal with. I mean, she's the instructor, she's teaching them how to overcome those characteristics, but they don't have every characteristic that Yogi, but they do have some. This way, Alex Doty's task group cannot, they may have similar characteristics, but they do not overlap into any other. It's kind of kept separate.
Well, because they're all one. They're all channel 1.
Okay, well, then that may apply, but what I was saying, when I keep dealing with whatever it is that he's dealing with, and Anione's dealing with it at the same time, and it's coming from the strain it doesn't. But she is getting it from her strain, or
No,
she
right.
is getting it from
Right.
his strain. This is what I was trying to say. Okay?
Now, let me just expand. This is good because you're not going to be awake all night. Or maybe go to sleep next night. But this has opened my head a whole lot, and I wonder if that little gene in you that is the identity isn't the one that has an assigned frequency. That little gene in you that is the identity that would go from vehicle to vehicle and live life after life isn't the one that has an assigned frequency. And that you, each time you experience things, that assigned frequency is like your transmitter to all those who are hooked up to that frequency. That does not mean that everybody on that frequency experiences that particular characteristic, but everybody who is on your identity frequency, if each characteristic that they had in common with your experience, each characteristic that they had in common with your experience would come into their consciousness and apply as they dealt with their vehicle. Now, isn't it Glenody's vehicle that is triggering a lesson that can go out to his strength? One possibility. I'm not saying that we're talking a minute about how it works in reverse. You see what we're saying? But let's say that something is initiated by Glenody. Glenody puts his hand on the burner in there because he wasn't smart enough to see that the gas was on and the flame was and therefore at that moment it's initiating at Glenody. Now his response to that, the thinking that he goes through, his self-control and so forth at that circumstance, might then go out to everybody on his channel. Now, anybody on his channel that has that characteristic in the genetic structure of the vehicle they are occupying would be the recipient of it. Now, let's say that there are 43,723 on Glenody's channel, and so many of them have these common characteristics, and so many of them have these characteristics, and so many of them have these characteristics. Let's say that nothing astrologically occurs in heaven, or it's a full moon, or something else, and this whole package of numbers on his strain are affected by that thing on a given characteristic that is triggered by what's happening in heaven at that time. When they have that to deal with, it immediately comes to him as if they're crying help, because the vehicle that they're wearing is being affected, and since their identity gene is on his frequency, but his vehicle identity gene, it comes to him, and he then has something good to offer them, or doesn't have anything to offer them, depending upon what he does with the signal coming to him. Does that sound right to you? Now, I'm just trying to put it in simple terms. Now, that could be characteristics of the vehicle, other genetic characteristics of the vehicle, but the transmitting element of information is the frequency carried by the identity gene. If you want to put it in just terms, you can try to have something to put it on. And it makes a lot of sense in my head. Now, that may be tonight, or tomorrow we might get a better idea tonight.
Listen, can you all say your questions because we have to take it?
We're gonna move.
Well, we think.
We can't make we're proceeding. We got the signal again to proceed. I'm glad you did that. I wondered if you thought when we were coming back 2 nights in a row, if you thought that was the reason. It wasn't. No, just the feeling. No, just the feeling. You got the signal. You got the signal. That's true. You got the signal.
When did you start feeling it?
About 10 minutes before you got here.
How about the rest of it? Did it have
I had a dream last Friday night. Got to walk through it.
Friday night,
What's today, Monday?
Saturday when we got this.
Early Saturday morning.
But it's been, we haven't seen the lady.
No, and it still may not go through. All we're telling you is, all we're talking about is that we are pursuing it again. Same house.
What are we?
I don't know if this is right or not, but I've got a question. Oh, it's about that.
One of the fun things that happens in my head when I see people acting in a way and I can't figure out why they're acting that way. And I try to see if I can find in the world where it was socially acceptable to act this way and try to improve it. There are very world where what we would call crowds are just socially acceptable. I mean, don't you know that like in places like Casablanca and boring. A great percentage of people who are part of a culture that finds the essential way to make them feel and so forth. There's not enough money to go around and the only way they can make it. You aren't really the outcast. You're almost like a part of like socially how people used to be playing clubs, gangs, things where you build your ego to be a part of danger and go against the law. It's not an individual. It's a group. And with that, it could be very over. And sometimes I think that the crime about the individual or in social areas where crimes were the norm, and they don't know how to solve it. These forms, the little time that people don't have to figure out all time. I'm an automatic. Nothing but time. And they had no intention of changing the way they would do anything it took to get special attention and to get out. I think they would lie, they would say they're going to change the way they go to all the classes. Spiel for the draw whoever was who would come to the jail to meet with them and all, and they would just really have a strong advance for them. And the moment they leave and they talk freely with their social peers, which were the other members, some of them were about to new ideas of how to do a better job when they get out and go to an area where it might be a riper field and not be so stupid that's how we got lost. Something is wrong, don't even know it in the talk. It's almost become a way of life. I think almost a way of life for it. Like one fellow had money and paid a guard to maybe $600 to leave a through the door of the jail open for 10 minutes after the kids were finished. And so forth, he got up to pay. And he ran around town and saw nobody for a few hours. And then got drunk and went to the bar where he was arrested the time before he got released. When he got drunk with the same bar, he was arrested. And it's almost like he's never smart. Because he's done what he wanted to do, he's made his round, anybody he wanted to see, and done whatever he wanted to do for those few hours. He may have been gone 24 hours, I don't know the money he was. And he was back, and he was laughing, and all it was like, he was proud that he had one of them out on the team. And a lot of his type prisoners, they were applauding because he's really done a neat thing. He's come up with money, he's found the guard, all these things. He wrote. But he would have probably been very uncomfortable out that night. And I feel like a lot of them are actually released from their pursuits when they're captured. In other words, it's really uncomfortable for them. And so when they are arrested in prison for everything, there are forces what they have to do is they have all their assumptions around how to believe that they can act the way that they want. want to act. And you don't have to worry about arrest. You know, but the same time what you really want to do, like, that's still got more questions. The thing that occurred to me is I wonder if those minds, some of those minds in those vehicles weren't in a state where that was the norm. And they haven't broken out of it. They haven't adapted to a different way of life. They're almost a result of some tenure, some length of time in that social structure. And as far as change, mothers, when people have certain modes of conduct that radical people, things I can talk about. I'm not going to bring much of it at all. We feel like there is something because of what we experience.
What I was trying to say was that you might see things that are familiar to you that would not be of the human race, and that's probably something that you have participated in, maybe in the past, or it may be something that you want to, but again, you can't prove it, and there's no need to really. But that's about as close to the awakening that you will have, I think. But it's like what you know, when some of you know some things, some of you know other things, and some things come spiritual to some individuals and some come spiritual to others. It's just the difference. It's a mixture of a lot of characteristics in this class. We see things that you may not even be aware of. That you have. In other words, even though you do it sometimes on the level that your vehicle evolves, sometimes we can see it on a different level and know that they correspond in a certain way. Whether or not you can see it, I don't know. But again, we can't hardly put it in words and say, oh, you was one that worked in such and such a way, because we don't have the ability to even say what the ladies were. It's know that there are lots of lights. of our roads that we have, like here and there, for the protection of the neighbor. This way you're not allowed to talk to them until you're not able to tell any more than they want to give us to them on those tapes. In other words, we're given the information. Only once the next level wants to be left behind. So read an article in the magazine that we got in the mail yesterday, and it was written by Heinrich.
An interview with me.
Interview with it's not to tell you more. It's real interesting. It has a very he has to do a setup there where he has to reach to the factory for the company went to moved over to
But he said that he spends 50% of his time in Arizona. Some 40, 50 miles east of Phoenix in an area that's Granite Valley. Well, there's a mountain that looks like it was carved into the shape of a kneeling monk. Anybody who's familiar with Arizona know where that place is?
The praying monk.
Huh?
The praying monk.
Yes. You know where that area is?
I think that was that far.
Well, it might be on up that canyon from that area.
In Granite Region.
Yes. Anyhow, this rich person owns a big house up that canyon. And the house right now is headquarters for the new project, Beautiful Studies, but they're also still using the Illinois place for cataloging and for records of at present. And it sounds like the intention is to, even though this is what the article got, but the intention is to eventually move it all to the Phoenix area and get an office and so forth. But he's concentrating, or he wants to concentrate on encounters of the second kind. In other words, physical evidence. Second and third instead of just of the first kind. And but he in the interview he told all the transitions that he went through from the time he was such a skeptic and then saw or met with so many people that had certain experiences that he couldn't explain. And the funny thing was he's gotten smart enough now that he knows that he doesn't know anything about what's going on. And the last question I asked, we'll send you on the magazine, you can read the article right through, but the last question that the interviewer asked was, what does it do, what does all this mean in your relationship to religion or God or something? The best thing I can say about that is I'm like a spider back in the corner of the 747 who doesn't know who built it, where it's going, what its purpose is. And that was a pretty good answer. And he also said things like, sometimes I wonder if things that people see aren't projections that come from a higher intelligence that are like three-dimensional hologram-type projections that make them see something, but it isn't actually physically there. And in several of his comments, in answer to questions the interview asked, almost sound like things we've talked about. So he's done a lot of growing and a lot of changing. Did you want to?
Well, I just wanted to say that that was an example of this individual devoting his total time to UFOs and what he has picked up on Now, if we got more information than what he needed to know, then it's very possible that individuals could pick up on it. Now, that's the point I was trying to get across, and because it's obvious that he's really concentrating on the UFOs totally, and because of things that were said in that article.
His main statement is that there's something about the world of UFOs that cannot be logically explained under the vocabulary and terminology and understanding that the scientist terminology offers. That because even though there's physical evidence, in some areas there's like you can't imagine how they could remain as physical as they were at certain spots and get to another place without being known as physical. In other words, it's almost as if they can go in and out, or they can change their structure, or they can do something they wouldn't be able to move as fast or appear without others having seen them. And for a long time he thought that one of the very unique things about it was that when a spacecraft would appear, that it wasn't seen by others en route to where it was seen, even people who could pick it up at great height. And that he felt like that was one of the characteristics. It would just suddenly appear known as people in that particular vicinity. And then with this thing in New York State, where people for miles all saw the same thing and related it minutes apart, it shot that theory that he had, because here were people observing it, and another thing that's funny is that a hoax string always seems to accompany the incident. In other words, somebody says something is coming down or something is happening that makes some response in a way to do something that could be blamed as the hoax. In other words, like the plane that went up in New York, that some said was, he said he believed that the plane did go up and that they did it. What they said they did, but it wasn't what people were reporting. But the fact that whatever happened there caused these men to get in that plane and go up and do their holstering. Almost as, now haven't we talked about things like that? And so I don't give it very much chance for lasting very long, because I'm serious, because he hasn't been nurtured in the way that you have been nurtured, and he's thinking in the kind of complexity that is very unhuman to think in that kind of complexity. And one picture of him, I hope I'm mistaken, but one picture of him looked like he was maybe hitting the bottle a little too much, which I could understand if he is, because it's very hard to be as open-minded as he has tried to be, and yet when he has seen things that he couldn't deny, to accept them, but didn't want to be hasty to reject or accept it. One really neat instance was that we tell us the whole history of how the Blue Book thing, all its fallacies, how all they wanted to do was say no to everything. And one reason they hired him is because at the time they hired him, he was saying no to everything that was UFOs. He was saying that it was nonsense. And then the Condon report, he went through it and showed all of its flaws, and that they picked only certain incidents to study, and he knew at the outset that the ones they picked weren't worth fooling with, except for very few of them, but 25% of the ones that they picked 75. And 25 of them they still couldn't rule out. They couldn't actually say what happened. But one of them that was reported that nobody followed up on, and I want to stop after this so we can get to the questions, was an incident in the beginning that had always whetted Heinrich's curiosity. So he flew to New Guinea to visit with this priest and this nurse, and have you all heard about this incident? And these natives and where this craft appeared, and he visited with them. And this craft came down, and it was just as visible as anything, and it was like a saucer. And the nurse came running into the priest's office and said there was all this commotion out there. Something's really got them all stirred up. And said that the priest was not an alarmist. He took everything just super calmly. And he kind of sauntered out and went out where it was, and he looked up and he saw it hovering there, and so he waved at it. And when he did, several individuals who were admitted on the spacecraft all waved. And then he waved with both hands, and they all put up both hands and waved back. And then he went on back and he said, I think it's time for evensong. So they went to their prayer meeting. You know, it was like, and I said, well, why did you do that? He said, well, I didn't know what else to do. But the funny thing was, he was convinced that it was that he had been out of the contact with the technical world so long that the U.S. had craft like that, and that these were people in spacesuits at the window, and he was convinced that it was a U.S. Advanced routine, and they were doing an experimental flying over New Guinea, and just ruled it out, and that, or didn't carry it any further. He didn't think that it was something from someplace else. Well, you'll get a kick out of the article, but there's several accounts in there that are quite undeniable, and where physical evidence and accounts are very good. And yet, funny thing is, Heinrich, if you read carefully the article, you'll see that he contradicts himself several times. I don't even know that he's aware that he has done it. I'm not going to tell you where he did it, but it'll be interesting for you to know that.
We weren't sure how long his brain was going to last because of the kind of knowledge that he
The kind of
thinking that he was
going on as a result.
The same way that
that's right.
And now I'm curious as to how that works if the human brain supposedly is only used, what, about 10% or whatever somebody figured out. People don't use all of their brain.
But see, it's because it's happening to him in a short time. A short time, it may not seem like a short time to you, but it's years that he's been opening his head and letting that kind of thought come in. Now, if it was common, and he had lots of peers who were thinking that way, and they were exploring and coming up with kind of the same thought, it wouldn't be as hard for the brain to accept. But now, over a period of time,
it's as hard, what I'm not understanding is it a physiological reaction to not being socially acceptable or having others thinking the same thing, or is the brain itself, I don't know, cellular structure or something can't handle it?
It's both, because the brain experiences chemical disorder when a human is trying to remain scientific and trying to remain analytical. The vocabulary that he tries to use in this article is obvious that he's trying still desperately to impress the readers that he's a very intelligent man. Do you know what I mean? It's like, did you used to hear Secretary of State Haig in interviews, and one of the things that he liked so much to do that he felt like just really beefed him up so much was to use all these words. Well, and Heinrich, I think, has been ridiculed a lot, and the hardest thing for him to give up his cynicism for and begin to look at things a little more objectively is because he knew at that point there would be a whole segment of people that would begin to poo-poo. And he was trying to take even that segment with him. He was trying to talk in terms and think thoughts where he could even take the most skeptic individual with him, even as he explored the possibility that this might be this might be that, this might be that. Now the brain, his brain, he didn't inherit a brain that is accustomed to that kind of expansion. And the kind of expansion that he's doing by thinking the way that he's thinking is much greater than the expansion that you learn in any mind-expanding meditation, enlightenment, yoga efforts. You understand what we're saying? Because he's expanding into thinking in ways just like if he doesn't want to, he wouldn't dare say moving in and out of another dimension, something like that, because that would sound spiritual. You know, so he's constantly on the safeguard, doesn't want to sound like anything now. He doesn't want to be a part of anything. And so he's put his brain really to, he's straightening his brain. Now, if he had been with a group of people, we had nurtured him, and he had, over years, slowly advanced with others advancing along with him in this kind of understanding. It'd probably be easier for him. But you know what we told you, like Dan Fry and some others, in their experiences, they just go berserk. They either go very, very, very religious and say, the Lord came down in that spacecraft and he gave me this special message to give to the world, and I must be an angel. And that merely means to think that short-circuited in the head, so they wouldn't be talking that way. They wouldn't that easily ostracize themselves from society.
Don't you think it might be because of the relational energy that they are absorbing?
Yes,
In other words,
absolutely.
they have a one-sided idea
That's right.
that they're working on, and they're just trying to absorb all of that ray coming to them, and their brain can take.
That's right. Without nurturing, without careful nurturing. Your vehicles act at the time, even with the careful nurturing that we gave you. And it's just very hard. The funny thing is, I don't believe I've ever read anybody's comments in that as much as Hynek's comments that sound as if he has really been trying to tap our mind. And yet I think if we walked in and he knew who we were, he would immediately condemn us and say, here's the, what in the world did you do here? You're the last one to ever give me credence. You know what we're saying? But yet he has really, he has finally realized that the present tools, mental and word tools and sets of analysis that the science community uses now can't answer the questions. So he says what we've got to do is expand our way of thinking. We've got to think beyond where we're thinking, think in different ways, or we're not going to be able to figure this out.
Okay, now, in relation to our task relation to human, it's beginning to make even more sense to me that's why it has to take so long.
Okay. So you're doing very simple. You're doing very...
Yes.
The strains that are working...
And it's very difficult because we're working to the same kind of vehicles.
Also, that's very
we have
true.
to do it in the way we're taught. And
That's right.
step by step.
Also, the conduct is important. You can't... I think it's absolutely remarkable that I can talk the way he talks in that article and not have changed his whole conduct scheme. I don't know what his conduct scheme is, but he said, this is my whole, this is everything to me, and has been for years. This is my whole life is the exploration of this. Now that has probably kept his conduct, for the most part, separate, so that his mind could work on these things. But if he was trying to play the role of any significance, a father or grandfather, and play the worldly routine role and do what he's doing, the brain would just be in a real mess. But he's in his 70s, and to think as clearly as he thinks is amazing. Yes.
You know, getting back to something Joe said a minute ago about how he is really tapping our brains, so to speak. When, way back when we had this book, you know, that was published, and back in the town where this one writer wrote, what happened, the other writer come to the home, they were going to have a party to celebrate the publication of the book. And I know that they were sending a message for us to go there. They wanted us to be there. And it was such a strong pull because they had, this one fellow had used that method before and called for us, and we went, you know. And but I know that he was calling for us to go there again, but we had disowned ourselves from that book. And we were not going to do anything about it. We were not going to push it in any way. And I know myself, I had to say, no, we are not coming. That's to myself, you know. And it was just like, it wasn't until after the meeting that feeling went away. And we knew when it was supposed to happen. Now, it's as real, that is as real as anything. In other words, it isn't an imagination, because we know that it is, at least I know that it is happening. I don't know, I didn't even tell Doug, I don't know if I told him or not. He may have been feeling the same thing, but it's just like, no, we are having nothing to do with you anymore because you have double-crossed us, so to speak. They betrayed us in their ways. They let us down. And in other words, they told us they were going to do something to get our information, and then once they got it, they abused it. And so therefore, we're not going to acknowledge it any longer. And they could not benefit from the fact that they tried to help us. Or, I mean, they could not benefit from their desire to want to help us. Do you understand it? So, in a sense, that's, you know, hunting isn't directing anything directly at us. He's just asking for more information. And the only source that he has is right here, really. And because that's the way it is at this time. And but if we walked over to him and said, hey, we can ask them some questions and let us see if we can answer them to your satisfaction, he would probably look at us and say, what makes you think you can answer some of my questions? Because he is here in his mind, and we are here.
He thinks that he doesn't say this, but he very clearly gives the feeling, you'll see it when you read the article, that he doesn't think anybody knows anything of what he knows. And yet he knows that he knows almost nothing. Now, to have advanced that far, that's pretty good. And he also suggests that could it be that from UFOs is coming the knowledge that will give scientists the information they need to know to one day know what they're all about. In other words, the article suggests that from whatever it is that we call UFOs, that the knowledge is going to come to change the scientific setup so that they'll be able to understand. And I think he feels like his association with the experiences that he has tracked down has enabled him to open his head. You see? And if it was the contact with those experiences that enabled his head to open, then it's as if he's saying, it's because of what they've done that my head is opening.
Well, let's still talk about
No,
that, because
right.
let's ask questions that you didn't know about scientifically.
And when you were talking about the device that you believe some humans have, like level 3, well, I was thinking there must be something some brain surgeons stumble across. Some brain surgeons wouldn't stumble across, and I thought maybe there's glands that they don't really know what they're doing, and I thought that the glands could really be a device.
That's right. The device could have been there all along. Or if there could be organic material within the gland that would appear to be a growth or an abnormality that could be the very mechanism.
I feel like that the brain is designed for that particular characteristic, but the next level has to activate it. But I don't think that a human could have only if they go in and remove that part of the brain,
There was
which would be possible.
something on the local news. I went for skirt, and she was jeans or something. They had to drag her off. And I was wondering if I'm not sure I didn't know the story, and she was just claiming that she was jeans. And I was wondering if maybe an implant or a device or something maybe been triggered or something that started going haywire or something.
I don't think they tried to interfere with anybody's life in that way, because then they would defeat the purpose.
No, I don't think it suggested that they interfered. I was wondering if the vehicle broke down because of something that the next level might have prevented.
Well, it's possible now that I think about it, because of the fact that a lot of these people who have had contact with spacecraft have gone crazy, really have a bad reaction. Like this, like an incident where this policeman saw a spacecraft and he reported it, and Heineck examined it or investigated it. And the police officer was totally run out of his job because everybody lost respect for him, and ended up pumping gas in the service station. And I don't know that anything happened to his brain. It was the individual's reaction. But like the Pascagoula incident where these two fellows one had one kind of reaction and one had another. I don't know if that was caused by the implant or if it was just being close to the spacecraft. It's kind of
What happened to the brain because of the experience?
It might have been if whoever handled it, if they may have got to that vehicle.
Well, look at the impression that would, the imprint that would be made on the brain by experiencing what they experienced. And it's almost too much for them to take. It would almost be the responsibility at the next level to do whatever their methods of calming and anesthesiology and so forth. A lot of times they will be very calm after the incident, but the trouble comes then after they begin to awaken to the event sometime later, and that throws them all off.
Like Betty and Barney Hill. Betty wasn't affected by it at all. And yet Barney just was berserk and died shortly after that, I think.
And when he returned to the site to talk to investigators about what he had experienced, the moment he got to the site, he went berserk all over again.
I think it's just the vehicle, and I mentioned the next level is probably doing some kind of experiment with him or something, but I think they do a lot of those implanting or activating those homing devices, and people recover from it without any trace. they believe in set up, say, I've never been in contact with the state practice, but yet put their hand in the door right now. Or the state practice and they don't even do it. So it's just like any other operation, imagine. It can be a success or it can be failed.
Something you mentioned last night was really interesting to me, and that was, I haven't had a chance to hear carefully that part of the tape again, but it was mentioned that as the mind comes into our vehicles more, in some ways it's more limited in some of the things it can do in some aspects, and yet I know in other ways as the mind comes in, it gets more control and becomes more capable of performing at the next level, or making the vehicle perform at the next level. I'd kind of like to understand more what ways is it limited and what ways is it
Well,
increased.
did I say that?
Well,
I said that, didn't I? Okay, I know what I was saying. And did I know what